So please welcome Ben Hall. He's a Royal Society University Research Fellow at the MRC Cancer Unit, School of Clinical Medicine here in Cambridge. His talk is Pathological Behaviours of Single Progenitor Model, Defy Inference Techniques.
Okay, hello everybody. So today I'm going to be talking about problems we've had in the development of models, particularly sort of the interface between using models usefully and actually analysing the experimental data in such a way as we can actually make some useful inference about it. The first thing I'd say today is that actually I'm here on somebody else's behalf. These slides and all this work is done by Vicky Cossio, who's unable to attend today. So, to start off, I think the key theme here is that we need quantitative analysis to be able to understand different biological systems. If we want to say we have a mutation, we have a chemical that increases the proliferation rate, we need fundamentally to be able to analyse that data and say that there's a change with some certainty. And our ability to perform it in an obvious way can act as a bottleneck in targeted studies. And what I'd like to draw out is the suggestion that actually this is particularly problematic when people are considering extremely complex systems, big data systems where people are trying to machine learn, trying to trying to draw out complex inferences from systems we don't have a fully developed model. I'm actually going to go one step further and actually going to argue on the basis of one example that it has been proposed that complex systems may be pathological. And actually there may be mathematical properties which help resist this type of analysis. And I'm going to show that a very simple model that we've been trying to use to understand how cancer cells divide, how tissues divide, how tissues maintain homeostasis, has this pathology, and the impact it has had on my research. So, first of all, I'm going to talk about what I mean by being pathological. So this is a concept I'm taking from Peter Coveney's work, an opinion piece by Peter Coveney, and it really considers, if you like, consider a simple system with just two variables, and consider some sort of likelihood, some sort of landscape of different solutions and different likelihoods of solutions. Now, in this first example I'm showing here, we have a relatively simple, smooth landscape with a few preferred global minima and some local minima as well. Now, machine learning is proposed that machine learning and other data-driven approaches will work very well in these landscapes. But we're sort of outside of this box of the parameters we're looking at, extrapolation may be dangerous. So these are kind of known features. More rough landscapes may actually make interpolation within this surface intractable. Now, what you have here is you have very rapidly changing variables and system properties which can pose different types of problems for the analysis. So the idea is here, actually, now you can no longer smoothly say, well, actually, the difference between this point and this point can be approximated by a straight line because there's nothing like a straight line linking these 2 points, even though there is something like a global minima in this system too. But the final set of data is, I think, what the final class of model that you propose actually is the one I want to focus on. Mostly this concept of a pathological model. And this is where the model landscape is extremely sharp. It's dominated by a few singularities. This makes not only extrapolation impossible, but interpolation impossible. Because within the singularities, these are supposed to be flat bottomed in this hypothetical example, you can't make any inference as to how they change. Of course, as soon as you're out of that, it's a very sharp transition. And this class of models proposed to be particularly poor when trying to just draw out some interesting data analysis. Well, the system I'm interested in is a specific system. I'm interested in generally cancer development. Now, cancer development is a multi-step process fundamentally caused by a series of rare errors. Now, 90% of these carcinomas arise in the epithelial tissues, of which the esophagus is considered to be a model system because this is relatively well understood, but there are a variety of different systems that have been analysed like this. Now, these tissues can constantly regenerate through life, and it's thought that an improved understanding of these tissues may aid early detection of cancer and aid treatment of cancer. So they're an important system. But what do they look like? Well, essentially, you've got a very, in the most simple examples, of which esophagus in mouse is one, you have a single layer of basal cells, progenitor cells, at the bottom of the tissue, and as cells differentiate, they move up the tissue, undergoing a morphological expression changes as they until eventually they're shed from the top of the tissue. Proliferation, so that is the division of cells, is confined to this layer of stem cells, the stem cell population at the bottom, and the model is thought to be homeostatic. So that is, there is a balance within the system so that the tissue doesn't, under normal circumstances, vary in population. You don't get thickenings and reductions. Now, it has been proposed that clone expansion, so that is the idea that things get out of balance, may be linked to tumour development and disease. And fundamentally, what my interest here was is to quantify some of the behaviour through modelling and understand the mutations through accurate parameterisation of these models. Now, within the literature, there's been a lot of debate as to what the model of how the stem cell populations work. So for a very long time, it was proposed that there were different subpopulations within the model. In particular, there was this concept of there being one population of long-lived, slowly cycling basal cells that persisted throughout life, which gave rise to committed progenitors, which divided a few times before eventually differentiating. However, this model sort of turned on its head rather by a set of data generated by Phil Jones and theoretical work done by Ben Simon, alongside that by Ben Simons, where it actually was found that within certain tissues, you could show that actually a very, very simple model was sufficient to describe the clonal behaviour. What you have is one single progenitor population which divides to either give two more progenitor cells, two differentiated cells, or an asymmetric division giving one of each. And these differentiated cells then just leave, at some point in the future, leave the system, as in they move out of the basal layer. This choice of division is stochastic, and basically the idea is that the symmetric divisions are balanced in their probability. You've got the same probability of dividing to give two differentiated cells, and the same probability of dividing to give two stem cells. The overall model remains homeostatic. And in fact, actually, the model can be described actually just by a handful of parameters. So you can have the concept of lambda, which is the division rate, R, which is the probability of symmetric division. So probability R of giving two stem cells, probability of R of giving two differentiated cells, remaining probability is 1 minus 2R of giving an asymmetric division. And rho. Now, rho is the proportion of stem cells to non-stem cells in the basement population, and this can be calculated using lambda to give the rate of exit of these cells. So what this means is that you can actually describe the population dynamics in these tissues with just three parameters: lambda, rho, and R. So I'm just going to talk a little about the experiments now that underlie this, underlie the data I'm going to talk about. What you have is you have a tissue in the mouse. For example, this is mouse esophagus. You induce an inheritable label at a particular time, and then after a certain period of time, you come back and you count how individual cells with that induced label, how many cells are left. Now, this cannot be done dynamically in time. You can't watch the same cells growing. You can only induce it at a time and then take the tissue out and examine it manually at the end of the experiment. So you only have effectively two time points: an initial time point and a last time point. What you can do is you can say, well, after almost immediately after the treatment, you can see you've treated in the right amount, so you get single cells labelled. After a few weeks, you get clusters of cells. After a few more weeks, you see this growth of different size clones, an increasingly large average clone size. And in fact, that average clone size grows linearly over time, and it has a really well-defined slope. The maths behind it is very simple. We know that the slope is R lambda over rho. So this is a very simple measure, but what we're interested in, we want to quantify the behaviour of the model, is we want individual values for R, lambda, and rho. So we need to do some more experiments, or we need to do some better analysis. So one hope was that actually we might be able to look at the clone size distributions. So rather than just looking at the average, ask what the probability of observing clones of size 2, clones of size 3 or 4, or clones of size n at different time points. And we use that to discriminate against them. Now this is from an early fit in the single progenitor model, and it just highlights how the model is able not only to capture the average behaviour of the cells. So this is, sorry, just to go back, this is actually the linear behaviour experimental data. This again is comparing experimental data points with the model. It shows how the clone size distributions is accurately captured by this model. So we're very hopeful this model actually describes lots of the behaviour of the tissue. So if we want to sort of try to draw out perhaps individual parameters from those kinds of distributions, we need to calculate some sort of probability distribution. Now, the trivial way of doing this, and I say trivial in the computational sense, is to do lots and lots of simulations, and sort of a massive cohort, maybe billions of simulations, and then average out the probability, out the number of observations you see for different things, and calculate the probability from that. Now, this very rapidly becomes intractable when you want to get to very high precision, and because the behaviour of the clone size is an exponential like decay for very large clone sizes, it becomes intractable if you want to consider how large clones behave. So very luckily, an analytical solution was proposed by Antal in 2010. Now, I bring this up for various reasons, just obviously, I don't intend to talk through what this means, but to highlight this is a non-trivial equation, but also to highlight the fact that these terms, the M terms and the W terms, now these are confluent hypergeometric functions. These are non-trivial to compute. In fact, they're a research topic in themselves, I've discovered. And they're prone to errors when you take the available implementation. So for example, if you take the MATLAB implementation, there are some pathological points which will either return not a number, or worse, will return some nonsense. And if you're really unlucky, it will return a number which is not obviously bad. So it may be that you are lucky in, for example, the sum of your probabilities is greater than 1 or less than 0, and therefore you can obviously tell something's gone wrong in a set of probabilities, but you might not be able to tell that, and it's difficult to draw it out. So this is non-trivial to compute. It also takes a while to compute. And so there is a complicated balance off between whether you want to do simulations, which are trivial to run, but take some time, but can be easily restarted, or start these mysterious equations and see what happens. So we inherited, when we started the project, an inference technique based to get the unknown parameters of the experimental data. And what we're looking for is a range of a set of probabilities from a set of 3 parameter values, and we calculate the probability of giving an observed a certain basal clone size at any particular time point, and then we use the experimental data to calculate the log likelihood for different models to compare to see if we can find the model parameter set with the maximum likelihood. And then the underlying idea is then we pick out this maximum likelihood step. We might be able to calculate the distribution of the likelihood to get confidence intervals, and then wonderful, we're done, in theory. So we did this with a new experimental data set taken from mouse back skin. And what we found is that for parent parameters, rho is 0.7 and r is 0.15, we actually get very acceptable fits to the data. So this, it seemed to fit the experimental data very well in terms of the clone size distributions, but also it fit very well with the kind of parameters that have been quoted historically, also using this inference technique. So we were quite happy with this initially, until somebody did another experiment. And this other experiment, in principle, would give us an estimation rho. Now, the fits I showed you slightly differently. The absolute best fit we got had a rho of 0.85. Now, this implies a stratification, with the land rho not told you, of about 1 day. So the cells take about 1 day from being differentiated to leaving the basal layer and entering the upper layers. When we looked at this data, however, it says a very different story. It suggests actually it took about 4 days in the basal layer. And this was quite, and whether or not this 4 days was absolutely precise, it was quite clear that a 1 day stratification time would not fit here, because we can actually see, this is the percentage of suprabasal cells over time, we can see that really this number doesn't start going up until after 4 days. So it's quite unambiguous. These 2 numbers did not make sense. So then we started an investigation as to what was going on, in particular whether there was something interesting within the technique itself. So fundamentally, the way we were doing the search was a grid search-based method. So we picked regularly spaced arrays of different parameters, and we searched pairs or triplets of parameters, and essentially we looked at lots of different pairs to find the best thing, the maximum likelihood. Now this is computationally heavy, and it's potentially problematic if it's restricted to a grid because of the potential fine structure within the likelihood surface. So we thought, one of the first things we thought was actually maybe it's the grid search itself that was causing a problem. Maybe we were missing better parameters because actually the parameter sets we were looking at didn't quite fall, the parameters being considered in grid search didn't quite fall into the best category. So we switched to ABC. So this is not a grid-based method. And this didn't help at all. So we didn't know what was going on. So the obvious thing was to blame the experiment. So we suggested maybe the problem is not actually sufficient experimental sampling within the system. Now the nice thing here is that when we consider the problem of experimental sampling, we can generate experimental data through simulation, synthetic experimental data. Now the advantage of synthetic data is, of course, we can have as great sampling as we want. We can have as many observations as we like, as many virtual animals. Moreover, we know a ground truth. We know the parameters we put into the model, and we know the parameters we get out. So the hope was that if anything could work, it would be an extremely well-sampled synthetic data set. And the answer was that actually, what we're looking at is different heat maps of different parameter combinations where white is correct. You can see actually, you clearly did not get good agreement with it. Every time you're seeing a black spot here, this is a failed result. So this is very far from the reality. So what was going on here? So we found the impact parameters did not match the computational method's estimations, and we found that improved sampling didn't help at all. So what was going on? Well, when we actually started now looking at these pairs of acceptable parameters and comparing them to the known acceptable parameters, we found an interesting observation. Actually, this is now the probability difference between the acceptable pair of the maximum likelihood pair of parameters and the correct distribution. We actually found they were extremely similar. They differed mostly at low probabilities, but the difference was possibly within the error we would expect for the methods we're using. What this results in is that there are multiple acceptable solutions in the same data set. And actually, moreover, what we seem to be finding is that as long as they follow the experimental average behaviour, as long as the pairs of parameters had the same ratio as the average behaviour showed the ratio to be, we got essentially the same distribution. So we couldn't actually refine a particular parameter set. What we could find is actually no better than the simple line fit window. And then when we returned back to looking exclusively along this axis, what we found is the apparent 95% confidence intervals expanded massively. We saw for example, we can see the row fractional uncertainty go from 0.1 to 0.8. So this underlines this idea that actually we cannot discriminate against multiple different values of rho. And so what does this mean? Well, first thing to say is we can't say the model is wrong. Nothing in the experimental data has contradicted this model. In fact, this model still is capable of reproducing the available experimental data well, but the experimental data is not actually sufficient to do the discrimination we want to do. And the model really is limited for parameterization to calculating the average properties. And fundamentally, we need to identify new experimental information to include in the model if we are actually to progress any further to identify parameters and to test them. Now, I hope to have a real set of data to show you here today, but this is our speculation of what that likelihood surface looks like. Now, if you bear in mind what the initial singularities, the initial idea of a pathological system looked like with few similarities, what I suspect this likelihood surface actually looks like is essentially a razor blade. There are lots of equally unacceptable parameters outside of the average behaviour, and there's a very sharp drop-off as you go away from the average behaviour. But along the ridge of the average, the acceptable averages, it is essentially flat. There might be a slight curvature, there might be a slight curvature there, but essentially you cannot achieve that kind of discrimination. So where are we going next? Well, the next logical place is to look at spatial information. So I showed you some of the microscopy images where these clone sizes were counted from. We can actually start including this kind of information in a cellular automata type approach and see if we can actually simulate the shapes of the clones and see if we can get some new insights from that. Now, the idea here is that each cell lives on a grid, each cell is a state, and essentially we can fit the existing stochastic model, which shows some populations, and see how it behaves within the context of the grid, and see if there's anything interesting coming out. That's ongoing work. And just to summarise, we're interested in the quantification. The quantification of these types of parameters is important if we understand mutants, and we should understand cancer-causing events. And whilst we have a model that accurately reproduces the behaviours we can observe experimentally, there are fundamental limitations from that model that are fundamental to the model itself, not to the software that was used to analyse it, but the model itself. And the underlying cause of these discrepancies is the probability distributions follow the same average behaviour. And obviously I've got to acknowledge already that the person who needs acknowledging most of all is Vicky Cossio, who wrote the slides, but there are various other people in my group as well, and so thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions? Go ahead, Conrad.
It sounds a bit like the model of traditional roles with overfitting, except that it's a bit more extreme in kind of behavior. Did you try any of the traditional methods to deal with overfitting or detect overfitting, or could any of these be adapted to this kind of situation?
It's certainly something we could look into. I think for now we've at least convinced ourselves that we're not going to get better parameters from this type of model, whether it's overfit or not. And the analysis that we can now do reveals what we believe to be the true confidence intervals on the individual parameters. I think we're more interested, however, in actually getting those parameters or getting some useful biological insight from new parameters that we can include in. And so actually, rather than focusing on improving the model and analysis as it stands, we are focusing on extending the model. There is one alternative. So there are other labeled populations that we can examine. So I've only talked about the basal layer here. It might be there's more information when we count the cells that have stratified but still retain a label. I'm hopeful there might be something there, but this system has surprised us already, so we have to wait and see.
But overfitting is when you have too many parameters. I think that here
The more you can fit.
Yeah,
But
but
the
here the
more
parameters are
the
physical.
discriminate.
Yeah, I think this is a physical model, so the parameters are physical. The problem is that the range is too wide.
No, I agree they're the same. That's just a similarity. I wonder if you could get that, but I agree the origin is not the same. Yeah.
I think that an approach would be to look at the parameter space and shave off parts of the parameter space that corresponds to models that are essentially not physical or not corresponding to how you want to use the model in order to create some behavior that are of interest.
But
And then focus the search on this pruned parameter space.
So I do see a logic in that, and as I say, if we look just exclusively along this ridge, then we can actually get that. We can actually see a distribution that is not just completely flat. There is a slight curvature to it. However, if we're talking about the idea, and this is something very much wanting, is confidence limits, some sort of uncertainty on the measurements. That curvature is so shallow that we still actually have quite a range of numbers within that. It's just very much tightly restricted to this, I believe. As I say, we're still looking to calculate this.
What do you mean with uncertainty in that context? Parametric uncertainty or the uncertainty that you have in your measured data?
So in terms of the synthetic data, I believe that the minimum likelihood surface will look like this because we are not concerned about the sampling in that setting. When we're considering experimental sampling, what I actually expect is that the ridge here flattens. So there's a greater range reflecting the fact that there's limited sampling and actually there are multiple acceptable averages. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so the challenge of rephrasing the challenge is that you have a 3D sample, you're trying to image something out, and you want to know if you have a certain parameter, if that can match image that you are getting from your experiment.
Yes.
Right? So what visualization scientists do is that you are sampling the parameter space and you assign uncertainties to the parameter
actually just solving with Gillespie. We simulated it with Gillespie, so
Okay,
Continuous time Markov chain.
so you have a Markov chain model that you're looking at.
But it's not just stochastic function equation, it's discrete space.
It's discrete space.
yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
I can point to some.
It'd be interesting to sort of look into it, and I think
You can approximately do the range of that equation.
Which is actually what I have in my paper, so it's fine.
okay, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We're about to go into break, so let's thank Ben Hall very much.